So I'd like to introduce you to our panel. First of all, Minister Frances Fitzgerald, the most senior female politician in Ireland, Minister for Justice and Equality. Delighted you could make it along this morning, Minister. Excuse me. Also joined by Anne O'Leary, the CEO of Vodafone Ireland, by Laura McGahey, who is MD of MCO Projects and who's also the Executive Chair of Irish Design 2015. Joined also by Danielle Ryan, who is CEO of the Rhodes Group, and I know I was looking at your perfumes outside, Danielle, so you can all see what Danielle does. And also by Fionnuala Meehan, the Director of Sales with Google. You're all extremely welcome here this morning. We were talking a little before we came out, and what were the things that our panel would find most interesting. We thought we might start with the idea of resilience, that fear of failure that can often stop women from taking risks. As Paula was saying, that women can be very risk averse. And Minister, I think there's no better place than to start with as the most senior politician in the land now, it hasn't been an easy road. You were in the Dáil for 10 years, you lost your seat, and now you've come back to this position. How did you keep on going after that?
Well, you talk about resilience. It's a really important trait, I think. And I suppose it's about pursuing your interests as well, and knowing that if things go wrong or you have disappointments, and let's face it, life is full of ups and downs. In families, you often have to cope with illness. In business, there can be disappointments, same in politics. And I started out doing a social science degree and working in social work. And one of the things I learned about what helps children to cope is this trait called resilience. And I think we all have resilience, and it's something you need to build up internally, and it helps you to cope and continue and see the longer term picture. And I suppose resilience can be developed. I don't think it's necessarily...
Something you can learn.
I think it's something you can build and develop. I think it's helped by talking to people who understand your business, by having good mentors, by sharing, having women who are great at finding friends to share with. That's important. But I think it's equally important to talk to people who know the business that you want to be in. And that all helps build resilience. So it's important, I think, for us as women to think about resilience and going forward, because there are disappointments, there are ups and downs, there are challenges if you're in a career where you're in a minority, if there aren't so many women at the top of whatever business you're in, maybe the role models aren't there. So building that resilience in yourself, I think it's one of the things that helps a lot.
Absolutely. Fionnuala, we were speaking earlier as well about handling resilience in younger women who are working to you, that almost that we have to learn to be criticised, we have to learn to deal with failure sometimes.
Yeah, if I look back at my career, it's probably been, a litany of failures that I've learned from really well, right? But you learn the most when you try something and you go outside your comfort zone and you fail and you go back and say, well, wow, what did I do there? And you actually ask people, what could I have done better? And so I think the mixture of kind of taking risks, and then, being able to deal with failure when things don't go your way are incredibly important leadership traits. And really, as a leader, people are looking to you when things go wrong. That's when you really prove yourself. And the team that I lead at Google, it's a team of graduates, right? It's often their first job out of college. And a lot of what we have to do as people managers is actually help them understand maybe when they haven't had a great quarter, and the reason for that. And that goes for men and women. And that's okay. And actually to take that feedback constructively and kind of think, okay, well, what can I learn from that? And what are the hard lessons that I'm taking away? And I think, interestingly, in the millennial generation, I think they're highly motivated and want to do things that matter. But everybody has to understand that leadership is really about going outside your comfort zone and learning from failures.
Laura, you have an insight in this area too.
Well, I think it's interesting we talk about failure and we use the word failure, but actually if we think of failure in a different way and say experimentation,
exactly, yeah.
Or innovation, and that everything along somebody's career path, if it is a career path, is just a process evolving, and that we're all moving, and developing, and that we don't consider setbacks either personally, or we don't consider them as failure, but we consider them as a good learning experience.
You mentioned there the whole idea of having a career path. To look at the five of you in quite stellar positions. Anne, can I ask you, did you have a career path? Did you decide, listen, I'm going to go to a large corporation and I'm going to go straight to the top?
Probably not, to be honest. I'd like to say I did. But no, really for me, work was about being at my best and performing at my best, and being really open to learning and developing. And with that, you know, opportunities came. So I often say to people, you know, you can have people that are really ambitious and all they're talking about is their next job and I'm going to get to the top, and you're kind of saying, well, hold on a second. You're in a role, you need to outperform in that role. You need to be in the moment of the job and prove that you can do it, see what you can learn, but be open, be curious, be open to opportunities, have sponsors, network. You know, the typical woman thing about being in the corner, working really hard, thinking you'll be recognised does not work. You know, you need to work hard, you need to deliver great outcomes, but you need to be collaborative, you need to share your success.
And how do you do that? I mean, because it is true, I'm very familiar with it as well, people working doubly hard in the corner and never getting recognition.
And thinking there'll be a divine inspiration that they'll know
Somebody
that
will
Mary in
notice.
the corner is doing wonderful work. The fact is, even at my level now as CEO, we discuss people, we discuss their talent, their potential, their performance. If I don't know them, I can't give input. So you need to ensure that the people that make decisions about your career know you. It's very simple. And the ideal way to do it is through the work you do. So you're working on some project or you're involved in something. So, you know, you get them involved, you share it. Or if not, maybe something outside your role. It could be CSR activity, it could be additional projects, it could be getting involved in something cross-functional. But, you know, people say, you know, do you know Julia? We think she's great. It's great for me to say, well, actually, I heard Julia speak, or I met her, and I was really impressed. So it's little things about who's going to decide my rating at the end of the year, my next role, who's going to be involved in the big growth area of the company and are going to be looking for great talent and staff. So you need to shine a bit in an authentic way and in a real way. And I think all of us as leaders are looking for great people. You know, we're always looking for the next talented person. So shine, share, collaborate for the good of the company and for yourself. And I think you will get rewarded and you will get promoted.
So
I
step
think
up, don't
it
be
does
afraid.
take courage, you know. I mean, that moment when you think, will I speak or won't I? You know, will I put my idea forward or won't I? So I think that moment where you might hold back, and then you find 5 minutes later somebody else says what you were thinking.
Yeah. And getting a round
Ju-
of applause
yes,
for it.
exactly. Just, you know, it does take courage and it means having a voice. And I think that concept, and it's a very, if you like, traditional one from a kind of feminist point of view, having the voice, I think that applies very much wherever you are, just taking that next step. And I very much agree with the point about career. I certainly didn't have any idea when I started out.
I'm going to be a minister.
Certainly not, or a TD. But I enjoyed every part of the various roles and jobs I had. And that's really critical, I think, to really make the very best and where you are at a particular moment. And then opportunities arise, and then you're in a place where you can take them.
Danielle, to bring you in here, I mean, on that idea of speaking up, I think you had very particular advantages, but also disadvantages in your own career, in that you were extremely young, you were dealing with boards of older men in RADA and Trinity, when you could quite easily have been dismissed at that age as, well, she's an heiress, she's an actress, what is she doing here? Talk to us a little about how you dealt with that.
Yeah, I guess you have to be aware of your situation and what you're dealing with, and I think to fool yourself into or comfort yourself saying, oh no, they don't think that, or you know, you have to be very honest with what the situation is. And then something that I live by with business and personally is that I always like to be incredibly prepared for everything, and this is just practical elements of it. But so I felt confident, and I always didn't feel the need to have to speak up actually all the time, because I knew that when I was to be asked, I was comfortable that I knew everything that I wanted to speak about in that way. So for me, knowing what I was talking about essentially was absolute key. Even if it was a brand new thing, you know, you do your homework and you figure it out and you're prepared for the next day, and then you have confidence in yourself,
Yeah.
and you can calm into yourself a little bit and say, no, it's okay. I'm here with the rest of you.
One thing you said to me, which I thought was very interesting, is, don't get panicked. Don't fill the silences. Don't feel you have to keep talking all the time. Because that's something I've observed in people that women can often do. Laura, you're nodding along to that one.
Well, no, I just think it's very, very easy to be the one to actually step in and say something when there is a silence. And you're absolutely right, not feeling the need to actually do that and just holding back a little bit, as you're saying, is a really important trait, and knowing when to chip in and when not to chip in.
Danielle talks about homework. Women are brilliant at homework.
We're brilliant
I
at
think.
homework. Yeah.
We really. I do notice that I think we tend to, if anything, probably over-prepare, and I think that goes back maybe to confidence as well. I mean, I would be very much like Danielle, that really
Think it through.
go
know
through
what
your
you're gonna say.
subject, know what you're talking about, all the I's, dot the I's, cross the T's,
Yeah.
and perhaps sometimes even too much.
Yeah, I think you
You
need to
know?
be careful of that, this perfection
do?
streak,
Yes.
because the higher up you go in organisations, the amount of work and the quantity. So you can't
Exactly.
prepare or you're going to end out exhausted. You can't, it's not going to be perfect. You kind of have to trust that after years of experience, your gig. And you don't have to prepare every line and every word. So I've really worked on that, because you have to balance the downtime. And you need to get your sleep and your rest. You need to be emotionally fit, mentally fit to be at your best. You need to get your hours sleep so you wake up in the morning refreshed. So we talk a lot in Vodafone about well-being, and I think it's particularly for women. That you need to take your time out, whether it's your walk or your yoga. You need to eat well, you need to exercise so you sleep well, and that you have that balance. So if you're prepping and swatting till 12 or 1 in the morning, not sleeping well because you're worried. I hear a lot about women, I worry and I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like going, oh dear God, it's just not worth it. So what are the techniques that you're going to learn to help you sleep? Because you'll perform better and you'll be at your best, certainly during the crises, when as a leader you're expected to be emotionally stable, rational, practical, and making the right decisions. So I think it's something that we as women have to manage, and I manage, because I can't afford to get sick.
So not just the study, you've got to look after
Oh
yourself
no,
as well.
Well, you have
it's
to be
the
able to think
well-being
well.
and the health, and mental health, not just physical health. And how do you compartmentalise things, not worry. Worry is the biggest waste of negative energy, I believe. It's needless. And I'm really good at just letting it all go. So you're just not stressed. But I think people need to think about how they do that.
Yeah, it's not always
No,
easy.
I know. I know that.
From my own
Sleep.
point of view. Sleep, okay,
must
got it. Fionnuala, if I can ask you, I mean, you're obviously working in Google. It's an area, I think many of the audience will be interested in the area of science and technology, and the ongoing problems that we have globally with bringing women into the area. We saw Hillary Clinton speaking about it recently at Silicon Valley. Why is that, do you think? Why are women still not stepping into that field?
So I wish there was a simple answer, but I think there's probably 3 parts to it. I think, if we look at the current representation of women in technology companies, it's not good enough, right? It's not where it needs to be. And Google issued its diversity stats last year, and many other technology companies have followed. So, 20% of our leadership and 30% of our staff. Now, it's a little bit better in the non-tech side, but it's nowhere where it needs to be. And I think there, you need to look at role models, and we also focus on unconscious bias. We all have biases and perceptions, and it can almost happen in a cumulative way that people hire in their own image, they promote in their own image, and they maybe have people in their team that they're comfortable with rather than looking for diverse styles, etc. So I think, you need to measure it and be conscious of it in terms of what you have. Then I think you need a pipeline then also of women coming into technology. Technology is about products. I mean, who's using products? Women are using products. So we need more graduates. We definitely need more female tech graduates. But we also need more women looking at tech companies and thinking, I could work there. That's a place where I could work. Because it's not all a techie, geeky environment. I'm in sales, right? And we've loads of women in sales, and we need more women in sales. So it's about those perceptions as well. So that's an important pipeline. But then even one step further back, we need junior and we need kids at junior cycle and senior cycle really thinking about careers in technology, but also things like computer sciences, coding, not just as skills for technology jobs, but for any job. Because coding is like English was. I mean, English to history and geography, you have to be good at English to be good at those. You know, in future, you know, in 10, 20 years' time, to be, you know, to express yourself creatively, to start your own business, you're going to need those skills. And so, you know, one fantastic way of doing that would be to get, you know, computer science as mandatory on the Leaving Cert curriculum, because that takes away all of that perception and bias. And we know young girls don't really see themselves as being good at this, right? This is one of the reasons they're not choosing it. We did a white paper last year. There's not enough social encouragement, and they actually don't believe that they have the skills. And of course they do. So one way of mitigating that is to actually make it mandatory and put it on the senior cycle. So I think there's many layers, you know, we need to address
It's a really
it in many
interesting
layers.
idea. Are you pushing for that? I mean, is that something you're
Yes,
discussing with the Department of
absolutely, because I
Education?
think we've got a module on the junior cycle at the moment, which is fantastic. But if you look at the UK, they have computing now is mandatory, computing module mandatory from 5 to 16 years. And we all know junior cycle choices are made in senior cycle, right? It's what you do in your Leaving Cert. And the mandatory part is really important for female students, because a lot of them will not opt into it themselves because of the lack of social encouragement and because of that perception that they have. So I feel really strongly that that is something we should be looking at, yeah.
It's interesting. And then I suppose, Minister, to ask you, you know, I would imagine when you walked into the Department of Justice that you didn't see many people like you in there, you know? I mean, it's like any government department, there's a lot more men than women. How difficult was it to walk in there as a woman and begin to make changes, to make it work in the way you wanted it to work?
Well, it was greatly helped, obviously, by my experience of being a Minister for Children and Youth Affairs beforehand, and the build-up, I suppose, to it, 20 years in the Dáil and doing legislation. But it was actually very exciting because it is such a broad department and so many areas that I've had a particular interest in over the years, you know, from family law to mediation to rehabilitation to legislation for families and children, a very broad area. So, but yes, at the beginning, of course, when you take on any new job, there is a whole, and I took it over at a particularly difficult time. So there was a transition period, but it was so busy. I think I had a report on my desk the next day that I had to take in and deal with the issues and go out and present an approach in relation to it after we had discussed it at Cabinet. So it was very challenging, but it was very interesting. And I think when you're interested and you're committed and you have supports, really the gender issue didn't come into it. I just got on with the job, really.
I mean, I suppose the perception of civil service would be that it's very top-down. I mean, when you went in there, did you feel, I would like to work differently. I would like to work maybe.
Yes, and I probably did actually. I mean, one of the things I would have done immediately would be to work very collaboratively with the management team and continue engaging with the management team, which was mostly male as it happened.
And was that difficult for them?
I'd say there was a bit of adjustment, all right, but people just get on with it then. When you're doing the work, when you're leading. I mean, we're talking here about leadership. And everybody has their own style of leadership, and I think women bring tremendous qualities to leadership.
What are they, do you think?
Oh, I think they're qualities of inclusiveness and collaboration, and not feeling that you have to have all the answers, but really seeking out, the experts in different areas, hearing what they have to say. My experience is that we're very good at that. I mean, that would be my own style of leadership.
That's really interesting. Not being afraid not to have the answer.
Yes.
You'd like to ask the question.
Absolutely. I mean, the skill in leadership, I think, a little bit like what Anne was saying, you can't know it all, but you know what you need to do. You know the priorities. You know the people you need to bring together to arrive at the best solution. And I think one of the things probably that puts people off politics is what they see as the very adversarial nature of it. It really turns a lot of women off. But when you think about the job of government and the job of the Dáil, the job of, the decisions you take in government, they're so important for the future of our society. So, and government, you take such important decisions. So we need to have that critical mass and that representation of women. And, well done to Accenture Ireland, because what Alistair was talking about that Accenture has had to do in relation to engage women and to make sure that women progress, that's precisely what needs to happen in politics, so that you get that energy and vitality of 50% of the population into politics and making those decisions that affect every family. So you've got to have the perspective of half of the population when those decisions are being taken.
And we're
it's
looking
a real
at
gap that we don't
quotas
have it.
now. I mean, Laura, if I can bring you in on this, I mean, the quotas are coming in for the next election. 30% of candidates will be female. People are talking about it for quotas for boards around the country. What's your view on that?
Well, I'm not a quota person, to be quite honest. I mean, I see a lot of change coming about, and I wonder, is it through the education system? I wonder, is it because people are more confident as young people, and is it coming through naturally? So I'm not a huge quota fan. If I could go back to just something that you were saying there about, did the Minister notice when she was a woman going into a kind of a male, more male-dominated environment, let's say. I've spent most of my life in construction, which is incredibly male, but to be perfectly honest, when I go into a meeting and possibly I'm the only woman leading the team in that construction environment, I don't first of all walk in and say, oh, I'm a woman, I'm now going into a meeting full of men. You know, you're going in as the person doing the job, and I don't think you are, certainly I'm not aware of being a woman in a male environment. I think you go in, you do your job, and you do it as well as you can.
Do you see differences in the way that women and men work?
No, I really reject any kind of stereotyping. I think that there are collaborative men, I think there are collaborative women, I think there are women who don't collaborate at all, and I think there are men who, you know, so I don't see it in black and white terms. I mean, I'm thrilled to be here with so many women in this room, and it's fantastic to have women leaders, but there are terrific men leaders as well.
So do you think diversity is important in gender? Do you think it is important in a
I
company
do think
to
it's
have
important. I think it's
a
important.
fairly even mix?
Absolutely, but not necessarily just men, women. I think diversity in leadership styles. I think diversity in ethnic backgrounds. I think diversity in religion. I think all kinds of diversity makes for a richer environment and a richer organisation. So I don't see it in male, female.
And what's your view on this?
Oh. I suppose I'm very, very strong on the gender diversity piece, because that is our issue. There are not enough women CEOs and high-level women. We are not breaking that glass ceiling quick enough. It is very simple, and there are very serious issues in companies around that, because the issue is all the research say that men do not think that women have the leadership qualities that men do to reach the CEO level. I mean, that is what the research says. So when we go for those CEO jobs, they talk about us differently, they rate us differently, and that is bias that's there, and it's a huge issue. So, you know, in Vodafone, we have 5 women directors and 2 men. So it's very unusual. We're very gender higher on the women at a senior level, but we have done an awful lot of work on that, and it is constant work, and it's on gender diversity, and not to call it anything else different. There are masculine traits and there are feminine traits, and we are different. You see it in women, little boys, little girls. We're different. It's fine. Let's celebrate it. But really realise that we need to make sure that the cultures and the environments we have in our companies are gender neutral, is what I call them, right? So you don't have any power, you know, top-down hierarchy, dictator type, or too much of the collaboration and influencing a network. So what you want to bring is the feminine skills and the masculine skills together to balance, to create an environment where all males and females can reach their potential and be successful. And in Vodafone, over the past 5 years, we've really worked on this, where reward, bonuses and performance is based on how you work, not just what you delivered. And how is, you might have reached your 5 million target, but if you left 10 dead bodies along the way, it's simply not acceptable. Were you collaborative? Did you bring people with you? You know, and, you know, I feel really strongly that we need men on board, which is absolutely key. We are successful if men get that we will achieve much better business results if we have gender balance. and gender-neutral behaviours where
Can I
everyone
ask you,
can be successful.
How did men react to this? I mean, you know, if a man reached his targets but maybe had not been entirely collaborative or
He
had...
gets the exact same feedback that you and I would, which is that is simply not the way it's done here. It's not about individual success, it's about team success. And together, bringing people in, getting advice, getting different ideas and perspectives is absolutely, whether you're a male or female, the way it works, the culture, the mindset and the behaviours. And we have really successful men and really successful women and a really successful business. I don't do it because I feel I owe it to the women of the world. I do it because siloed working is not successful. And as you probably know in Vodafone, we got rid of offices. So any sense of power, you know, is not physically there. I have no office, no directors there. We all hot desk. There's really cross-team collaboration because I see that there has to be. So those traits and behaviours are actually more women. But 80% of my customers are women that make decisions about mobile and fixed telephony in the home. So I need people that build products and market to females, not, you know, providing marketing campaigns with, you know, speed and power and men killing each other. You know, they need to be emotionally engaging campaigns that women will go, I like Vodafone, I'm going to buy products and services. So I just think getting men on board, though, is key. And you heard Alistair, it was wonderful to hear him as CEO saying it's a personal mission that I'm going to create a gender diverse workforce because he believes in delivering. But it's an ecosystem of activities. There's no one thing, is what I'm learning. Okay. And it's constant, and we must never give up because we need more of me in Ireland and in the world. I go in and most of the CEOs are men.
But Danielle, you're another female CEO here, and I know in your own company you've a gender diversity. You've a lot more women, actually, don't you?
Women,
than
yeah.
How many? Give us the numbers there.
I think probably 30% men.
So
and that wasn't on purpose. It wasn't my interest to have a female-led company. It just was the team that developed based on the skills that was required, and these were the best people for the job. And at this point now, you know, I never go into a project necessarily knowing how it's going to turn out, like probably everyone else. And I'm always extremely ambitious about what I want to do. And I think ambition can be seen as a sort of dirty word. And I kind of keep my ambitions to myself, but I'm very clear about what they are. Because people don't really necessarily like that. So you have to find a team that work with you. But any of the business I've done internationally, I've never found gender issues. I know what my strengths are as a woman compared to a man, and at times I will use that because I might be a better listener, or, you know, certain things that might happen within the environment if it was all a male boardroom, for example. But I don't see that there's any battle going on there. I've found that it's been totally equal, and you just use everything that you have, your team, and I think for me, Women's Day and what it signifies to me would be more about having our sort of almost internal chat, not saying, you know, that's them and this is us, but it's more of a confidence within ourselves, saying, no, be ambitious, try. What's the worst thing you can do? You can make a fool out of yourself. You'll probably learn a lot from that. I make a fool out of myself all the time, and I don't mind it at this stage. I've got to a point where I'm used to, or I accept that with every success, there's a failure too. And I've come to terms with that, and it doesn't panic me anymore. So I go, okay, one step forward, half step back. That's the way it is. That's how you climb the mountain. And you concentrate on day to day, but you also look at your scheduling over the week, over the month, over the year, and you're very organized. And I think that these are the skill sets, and then the main part, I think, for women is go on, just try.
Give it a go.
Just try.
Give it a
try.
go. Do you know what? We're just about coming to the end. I just wanted to ask each of you if there was one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self, that you would have for people listening here, something you wish you'd known maybe a little earlier, what would it be? If I can start with you, Fionnuala, what would you say?
I think, everybody can be a mentor. So, you talk about mentoring and sponsorship, but look for feedback from everybody, from the most senior person you come into contact with, because I can guarantee you're going to get something you knew reinforced with something you didn't know. And so every opportunity along the way to look for feedback and really absorb it, right? Not like
go out, look for your feedback.
Go out and look for your feedback, yeah.
Danielle?
I think not feeling bad about having to be selfish sometimes. I think we have a tendency to feel guilty a lot. Guilty
That's
as
very
mums,
interesting.
guilty as wives, guilty as loads of different reasons. And I think that sometimes I would have benefited by being a little bit more selfish at times. And it doesn't mean that I was a bad person for doing that. It was just what was required.
So, don't be afraid to be selfish. Laura, what would you...
Don't let being young hold you back. So if you're young with a really great idea, just go for it. Nobody's going to be waiting for you to stand forward. Just if you have a great idea, go for it.
That's interesting.
I think I was too loyal. I think women can be too loyal. I think I stayed too long. I stayed 12 years in one company. And I think I didn't know my worth. So I would say, know your worth and don't be stupidly loyal, even though loyalty is a lovely trait. And I think I should have moved on and tried different things and maybe gone to some other companies to expand my own portfolio.
That's it. It's not unlike Danielle's in some way.
Yeah.
Minister, what advice would
I
you
would
have?
say find out as much as you can about your business as early as you can. And don't be afraid to talk to the leaders in the area that you're working in, because most leaders are delighted to talk to you, to share their information, their experience, to talk to you about the journey. So find out and then see if that's where you want to go. But talk as much as you can, get as much information from people. Use mentors.
Absolutely. Well, listen, fascinating advice and really interesting to hear you all talk. Thank you so much for being here this morning. So, Fionnuala, Danielle, Laura, Anne, and Minister Frances Fitzgerald. Thank you all very much.